Hey there, leaders. Amy Gray here. So, today we're going to dive deep into a topic that's often misunderstood, but absolutely critical for effective leadership. And that is the difference between coaching and mentoring. Now, you might think, aren't they basically the same thing, Amy? Well, they're not. So, buckle up because we're about to unpack why it's not the case. And also why understanding the difference can actually supercharge your leadership skills. Let's start with a quick overview. Both coaching and mentoring are really powerful tools in a leader's toolkit. They're both about helping others grow and improve. But the approaches, well, they're very different. And knowing when to use each can actually make or break your effectiveness as a leader. So, to understand this better, let's look at what I call the influence spectrum. So, picture a line with three main points. At one end, you've got directing. In the middle, you have mentoring. And at the other end, you've got asking or coaching. As a leader, you can be constantly moving along this spectrum and moving between modalities. But let's break it down. So, the first one is directing. This is the teaching zone. It's all about teaching and telling. You're the expert. You're directing your team members about the what and the how. When do you use it? When you have new team members, potentially if you've got a crisis situation, or when specific procedures need to be followed exactly. The next is mentoring. This is your advising zone. It's where many people get confused because mentoring sits right in the middle. It's actually about advising based on your experience. As a mentor, you're a guide, you're sharing wisdom, offering suggestions, all based on your experience and journey. And it might sound a little bit like this. In my experience, approach X worked well. Or watch out for challenge Y. This is how I navigated it. Mentoring is often less formal and more targeted than coaching. And it's about transferring knowledge from an expert to someone less experienced. So finally, coaching, the asking zone. This is where the magic happens. Coaching is fundamentally about asking questions and listening deeply. As a coach, your superpower is curiosity because you're not giving answers here. You're helping the person you're with find their own solutions. And to be an effective coach, you need to cultivate a very specific mindset. So let's jump into some of these points. You need to believe in the coachee's potential. You've got to have a focus on outcomes and moving forward. You need to stay curious and be open. It's important you build genuine connections and give 100% attention. You seek clarity through your questions, and you need to be able to challenge your coachee with confidence. Now, you might be wondering, look, Amy, why bother with coaching when I could just tell people what to do? It'd be so much faster. Good question. I hear it a lot. Let's dive into the neuroscience of why coaching can be so powerful. So the first is relevance and dopamine. When people have to go searching for their own answers, it triggers a dopamine release. And this makes the insight that they get more meaningful and memorable. The next is emotional engagement. Coaching engages the emotional brain, and this leads to better recall and implementation. And finally, ownership. When people have to discover solutions themselves, they're more likely to act on them. It's like the IKEA effect. We value what we create. So coaching isn't just feel-good fluff. It's a scientifically backed approach to developing your team's capabilities and also fostering things like innovation. But here's the kicker, and listen closely because this is critical. Effective leadership isn't about choosing coaching or mentoring. It's actually about knowing when to use each approach. Let's look at it using a simple matrix to help you decide which style to use. This is the situational leadership model simplified. If you've got low knowledge and low ownership, you use a directing style. Low knowledge, high ownership, your mentoring style. High knowledge, low ownership, there's more support. High knowledge, high ownership, then your coaching. The key is flexibility. Great leaders can assess a situation quickly and then adapt their style to what's needed. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, but Amy, I don't have time for all of this, asking and listening. I need to get results now. I get it. Leadership is often about balancing your short-term needs with the long-term development of your team. So here's a mental model that I sometimes use. It's called the query quotient. Try tracking your query quotient in your next few team interactions. Are you asking enough questions? Could increasing your query quotient lead to better long-term outcomes, even if it takes a bit more time up front? Remember, the goal isn't to abandon directing or mentoring. All three approaches, directing, mentoring, and coaching, have their place. The art of leadership is knowing which tool to use when and which to switch between, even in one conversation. You see, I will always try to begin with a coaching approach, asking questions because I know it engages the person's brain. And then when I know where they sit or what they might need, I move into another style. That might be mentoring, it might be teaching, but I will switch between the styles that I feel fit the situation. So here's your challenge. In your next team meeting or one-on-one, consciously try to move along that influence spectrum. Work out which one works best. Start with directing if needed, shift to mentoring when you can, and maybe push yourself into spending more time in that coaching zone. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's actually about creating an environment where your team can find the best answers together. And by understanding the differences between coaching and mentoring and when to use the right approach, you're not just solving today's problems, you're actually building a team that can tackle tomorrow's challenges. So that's all for today. If you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up, share it with a fellow leader, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights on leveling up your leadership game.